you need to understand what it is about your work that they like in order for you to keep them as an audience. Because just because you got them once doesn't mean that you're entitled to them forever.
Now I'm gonna dive back into Aggie's psyche and do all this other stuff, and like, am I now belittling my main character for the sake of a isn't that cool moment?
I think that we can all agree, decide at the outset, is this going to be a fixed story? Or is this going to be an episodic that goes on forever?
I'm such a basic bitch when it comes to like endings, man. Like, give me the fucking villains losing, give me the heroes winning, and just deliver a very straight down the center plate.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 18.
Oh shit, we've been recording?
We have been for an entire minute. Yes.
I didn't look. Oh my god.
It's burning and it's itching.
Burning in the pitch.
I'll fix the camera, I promise.
Yeah, the last 5 minutes.
All right, so we have decided that we are talking about how to end a story.
I thought you were going to say how to end like a professional relationship.
Yeah. How to end this particular episode.
Yeah.
This
Real
episode, I predict, will end in a blaze of glory, as most of them tend to.
Positive thinking.
Yeah, I feel like
I'm positive this is horrible.
positive it'll go up in a fire.
Positive as the ending of Pretty Woman.
Come
Oh
on.
my god. Julia did nothing wrong.
Yes. She fell ass backwards into a perfect relationship.
I'm just trying to figure out how I'm gonna edit the last.
Keep
2
that.
minutes of this.
Keep the whole bit.
Oh,
Keep
let's keep most of it because
it's gonna pop up. It's like standby technical difficulties. You know what? Fuck it. We're throwing it all in there, and it's like just hookers and
Doing it
itchy
live.
asses and yeah.
Oh my god, Gib. Oh my god.
It's the worst version of
So
everything.
if you are just joining us, welcome. This is
This is our life now.
So you got, of course, the amazing Eric Canete. How are you,
Hello.
sir? We got Mr. Gibby down there, MK Gibson, and and we got Cyborg.
And we got wow.
And
I thought is the way
I'm
she said,
sorry.
we got a sigh.
We got a major sigh. Wow. Why did that sound sexual?
Well, you know what? I feel like the face I'm looking at you with is right now is not judgmental enough. So
Oh, okay.
That's judgy. a little more judgy.
You know what would really work in this moment?
What?
If you turned your camera on.
If we did the episode.
That too. All right, so like I said before, we were talking about how to end a story, whether it's for a book or a comic book issue or the overall plot line, and when to know when the end is coming, how to end it. Yeah, when everyone's sick of it and you should just lay it to rest. And one of the big things that happens at endings typically is the big reveal, right? So you've been following people and don't know who the baddie is, and normally that happens at the end. But I was talking.
Eric gives it to us in the introductory paragraph, and that's fine. That's a school of thought.
I opened with it.
Okay.
Here's our villain. We haven't even met the hero yet. No, but here's the villain.
But see that, so like, okay, that's one good point though. Is the big reveal isn't always who's the bad guy.
I just had an awesome idea.
Oh gosh.
Have the story start with the villain, and like you see that they're kind of shady, but you like play up their good attributes, and then later it's revealed that they're the villain.
There it is.
That sounds like a Gib series, actually.
If it
like
isn't,
an
it is
entire
now.
series that he already has going.
Well, no, that's just the entire premise of the show, The Shield, where like you're following Vic Mackey, who's like is a protagonist, but he's the villain. He's actually the bad guy.
Do you know that? Do you know that up front
I never
because of his conduct? Like he's an
he
asshole, and
shoots. He shoots a fellow cop who he knows is an informant, and then stages it. And like, but he's if you've never watched The Shield, it's that one of those shows where like at the very opening, like he shoots a fellow cop because he knows he's an informant. Blah blah blah. Stages it look like it was shot. He was killed in a gang shootout, but. Throughout the course of the show, you find out he keeps one drug dealer in power, so he doesn't create a power vacuum. He gives money back to prostitutes. He has admirable traits. However, you can never unsee or not remember the fact that he did kill another cop to protect his own ass because he is on the take. He is taking money. He is doing these horrible things. And every good force that tries to bring him down is portrayed as the antagonist. Because it's like he's the protagonist of the show, so it really flips that on its head, and it's one of the things.
But is it because it's relative to who he is as a guy who kills people and keeps people?
Well, he's a family man too. He's a narcissist, and I can get away with this. Him and his whole team. Yeah. And when the one guy on the team, eventually, spoilers for a show that's 12 years old at this point or older. When one guy on the team that's he thinks he's going to turn, they kill him. They kill their moral compass.
I never saw this.
Isn't that comments thematically similar to Walter White and?
It is this is a proto before Breaking Bad. You had the guy who created when Kurt Fuller eventually went on to write Kurt Sutter, excuse me. Kurt Fuller's an actor. The guy who wrote Sons of Anarchy. He was one of the showrunners and writers for many episodes of The Shield. So he took those lessons learned and went on to Sons of Anarchy. But I still stand that The Shield is a better show
than Sons of Anarchy.
Because Sons of Anarchy gets long in the tooth. Talk about a show that should have ended at a certain point.
No, 100%.
So whenever you have a series where you don't know the ending, if you don't have an ending in mind and it starts going longer and longer, that could be a book, a comic, a movie, whatever, a series of any kind. It's everything. It's just. The characters start becoming parodies of themselves. They become pastiches of themselves. They don't resemble the characters they started. And some people call that evolution, which in a way is good. But if it comes to a point where it's they're completely opposite of how they started and you don't recognize them anymore and they're just kind of spouting their catchphrases as the plot goes along, then it diminishes the whole. I mean, we've talked about these kind of things before. So you have
I hate it when that happens.
Right.
Yeah. And the weird thing is you can tell, right? It's so strange that they're way past the point where they can tell interesting evolutions of these characters. They're now, like you said, they're just turned into cartoon versions of themselves. I felt that way generally about watching X-Files, where I'm like, sure. These are all just sort of they're rehashing snapshots of what worked of this character, but they didn't know how to pull it off as well as they used to. And you want to talk about a show that didn't necessarily have an ending in mind, or they only had experiences in mind. Was Lost. Lost was all about it wasn't about character development; it was about character experiences. And so when they did do these evolutions or the maturation of these characters, they never understood how to do it well because it wasn't the experience anymore. They would change them willy-nilly because they just wanted you to have, here's what experience is now 5 years ago from this character, because they always did everything through flashback, right? Because they wanted you to contextualize what was happening in present via flashback episodes. And you go but that's not what you set up season 1. Fast forward to season 5 and you're like, this is weird now because this is not what you told us 5 years ago,
Yeah. And it took such a hard turn, I think, because they realized that you can only justify, I guess, people being stranded on this island and trying to survive for so long before there has to be more to it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was going to say, going back to Sons of Anarchy, I remember the moment, I actually really enjoyed that show for a long time, but I remember the moment that I noped out. And it was because they had, and I didn't watch it super strict, in order every episode or anything. But I happened to catch the episode where the woman who also played Peggy Bundy,
Katie Seagal.
That's all I know her as.
Yes. So she's phenomenal. I love her. I saw the scene where she was assaulted, and here's the thing. That's uncomfortable, period. Right? It's an uncomfortable topic. And going into that kind of a topic is always going to be a little taboo. It's always going to be a little bit risky. My problem with it is that was going we're not pulling a single punch, but in a serialized show. And it was something that I tried to watch 2 or 3 episodes after, and I was like, that just really fucked with me, and I can't get past it.
You know what the worst part of that was, Shae? And I agree with you, because one, it's like one of my iconic, like the reason I'm still alive today is because of Henry Rollins, and he was the guy, the actor they had do the deed in that particular scene, and it broke me to see my hero doing that. But if you never finished watching that season, I don't blame you. A lot of people checked out. But that assault that happened to Gemma was at the basically Jax and Hellboy's name, Ron Perlman's character's name is Clay. They were going separate ways. They were like, we're done with each other. Fuck you, I'll kill you. We're done. Gemma brings them back together by using that assault as a moment to bond them, to unify them, to go after something. So it had a plot point that she kept it secret for so long. She didn't want to tell them. And she eventually told them when they were too far apart. The only thing that would bring them back together was her assault. To save her, to revenge for her, and I hate this. I hate this so much. I understand the plot point, but this is not a storytelling device you really want to use together, to use the assault of your wife and your mother to unify these two warring factions to get vengeance. That doesn't... You still use assault as a plot point just to further along these shitty people doing more shitty things.
And even if it had a plot point from the very inception of doing it, the way that it was handled overall was pure shock value. It was purely to shock and outrage the audience. And while I understand using that as a storytelling mechanism, and in some situations I can even justify using it, but for the vast majority of storytelling for me, unless you are telling a based on true events story where something that heinous actually happened, using that always feels gross. It always feels exploitive, and it always feels kind of emotionally abusive to your audience, because you're using it as a way to invoke a really visceral reaction from your audience without doing any real setup, right? There is no situation where they could have shown everything that they showed in that assault and switched out any character, any person in that situation. It would have been just as traumatic, right? Because it held zero punches. We're talking, this was the pinball scene all over again. It was it was
they pushed the bounds of what they put on television. Yes,
exactly. And to me, as somebody who likes to write from an emotional place to try and incite those kinds of emotional reactions, to me it's a cheap cop-out, because what you're doing is you're showing something that's so heinous that in order for you to not have a reaction, you have to have something fucking wrong,
right?
There has to be something wrong up in your brain that doesn't invoke a reaction. And it's, for a lot of people who've maybe been in situations like that, it's incredibly damaging and scarring to do. Sure. And it's done without any regard. They're like, well, you knew that mature themes happen. And it's yeah, mature themes does not mean that I'm going to watch step by step an assault take place. That's too far. And so for me, it's always felt super cheap.
I have no opinion. I never saw it.
Oh, you don't.
No, I know what you're saying, and I hate to say evolve, but I think I don't think you necessarily need to use that. Like you said, if you're talking about a true crime documentary, talking about something that actually happened to something, and paint something to a true events and the heinousness to it thereof, that's one thing. Using it as a plot device, just to further a plot about, again, bad people doing bad things. These are not heroes. They're not even anti-heroes. They're villains doing more villainous things. It's, again, it barred against from the Shield. It was a same-sex assault that happened in the Shield, where this cop got jumped by some gang members, and the gang member made the cop perform oral on him while he recorded it on his phone. And he says, if you ever out me, I'll put this video out, and he told his wife what happened. The cop comes home and she's like, why didn't you just bite it off? And she punked him. Why didn't you just die instead? because he had the guy's wallet, he had his address, and he's like, I'll come after your family. So why don't you just kill him instead? Why don't you just do it? And it's like, so this guy's now wrestling with it from a different point of view, but they're still using a sexual assault as a plot point to move things forward. And it's like, there are times when there are some people who want to use that. I tend not to. So
was this a male or female cop? I missed it.
Male.
It was male. It was a male cop forming.
Male cop, male gang member.
You know perfectly well that if that was a female cop, the spouse of that female cop would have been crucified for saying one word of any of that to the victim.
Well, but that's the thing
that was the part of that was the theme of the thing. It was like
that's like
emasculating the guy. Yeah, that was the whole.
That
point
was the point is to show that it doesn't matter.
But they were using that particular thing specifically to like feminizing this male cop as opposed, in a negative light, using and it's again, these are themes that worked in like 2005. It's been some years since then, and I'd like to think we've matured a little bit. Say what you will, like some of these things you don't necessarily always need.
Right. Well, and it always
lands differently with different people, right? Like
it does.
It all depends on first of all like the subjective taste of the audience, the viewer, or like the person who's experiencing it. My wife will sit through an awful an awful rape scene and be like, that's really awful, and understand it from a conceptual standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. But then cannot stomach anytime children are being killed. We watched The Northman, and there's a scene where they gathered all the children in the village and put them all into one hut and burned it into the ground. She had to step away from it, right? Because she's in that state of mind, So I I'm like, okay, I think you don't have to go into that sort of well too many times, but I also understand the mechanism behind it. Right, well, but if that's all we continuously go to for a narrative, I think that's kind of cheap.
Well, so this is where I think the difference is, though, Eric. Right, is if they show a scene where they show all the kids getting funneled into a hut, right, and then they show the doors being barred, and then they show the hut on fire, you're filling in the blanks.
Sure.
But if they put a camera in there.
Yeah, sure.
While the kids are screaming and being burned alive, that is different. That is a different like you can get the same point across and the same storytelling element without having to show it blow by blow. And I think one of the problems when it comes to a lot of people using assaults as storytelling mechanisms is that they show it blow by blow. Like they're afraid that society isn't just going to go, wow, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Like it's already bad. We don't got to see every step of it.
It's that whole Game of Thrones mentality. We're not going to shy away from this. We're going to show everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it's for shock value. And I really wish we could move past that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Actually, it was a one season, one and done show on Starz. There's like that kind of like King Arthur. I don't know if you ever watched it on Starz. I forget the name of the actor.
I didn't, but I heard of it.
Okay, so Eva Green, who I love, is in this thing, and one of the knights is going to try to assault her in front of all his knights. And then she's so frustrated with him, like fed up with this bullshit. She basically says, "Just do it. Come on, big man, let's do it." She just turns around right in front of your knights, and the guy can't perform. Because she's emasculating. She takes the beating, but she takes the power back in that situation, And it was very cool because she's like, I bet you can't even do it. I bet you can't even last long. I bet you can't do any of this. And like, it just, all the knights are all like kind of mocking him at that point. And in that moment, she took the power back. Now, again, she got beat up, but she came back and eventually killed the guy later. But it was a nice little subversion of that expectation.
I like Eva Green.
Oh, I love Eva Green. Penny Dreadful should have been on for 9 years.
I never saw it.
No, it's so good.
So that's kind of the thing is I feel like there's like big reveal moments. People are always thinking of it like being I'm unmasking who the main villain is, right? Or I'm showing you a major twist. But I feel like a lot of these kinds of incredibly emotionally charged plot points that are meant to incite like a really intense reaction, those are just as much a big reveal as anything else. So when do you choose to do those? Because Gib and I had talked about kind kind of the classic reveal where you do it at the very end of the book and then you end the book on that and everyone's like, oh, my mind's blown, I can't even believe it. Or flipping that on its head and revealing it to the audience, but keeping your main characters in the dark about it until the end. And I honestly can't decide which I think would be better.
It's in the execution, isn't it? Like it's in like
everything comes down to execution. I pitched this because I'm currently working on the third book in the Aggie series, and I've been leading to like this particular villain's reveal for some time.
Aggie's the villain.
Sure, why not? Take some notes. Yeah. What else you got? I'm working on a B plot that I can't quite figure out. I got some notes.
She just murders everyone and steals all their blood.
Oh my gosh.
Trust me, like where she's at now, it's 4 years later and life's not good for her. But I pondered, when I wrote my opening prologue, I did it from the perspective of the villain. And I use they, their pronouns, so I don't tell you if it's a guy or it's a girl. They refer to themselves in the third person, even in the pronoun, even in the thing. But then I had this moment at the very end where something happens and the villain turns, says something, and it's revealed very clearly who they are. Mm-hmm. And I looked back on it, and I'm like, I really, really like this. But then I started working on the next chapter, and I felt dirty afterwards because it's like, now I'm going to dive back into Aggie's psyche and do all this other stuff. And like, am I now belittling my main character for the sake of isn't that cool moment? But then I take another step back, like, well, if the main character doesn't realize it, but the audience does, it turns into a horror movie. Like, don't go in there. Don't listen to them.
Yes.
And
they're not your friend. They're the bad guy.
Right. And it's like, someone who may have been cloying, or someone who's been like tangential, someone who's been like someone. I'm not saying whether it's someone very close, someone external, but it's someone that you may have known this whole time. But does it hold
you're dealing
water?
with
I've done the reveal. I've done the end of book, like in the end of like the first Technomancer. Like, oh no, I didn't see that twist coming. It's so cool, But that was cool then, and part of me wants to challenge myself because I don't want to just do more of the same. But is it also just do more of the same because that's what people want?
I think in your decision making, and I suspect that you've already you walked yourself through this already. Give like anything that
I have, but do it for the audience.
Makes your protagonist come off stupid because they couldn't figure it out. I think that's the line that you don't cross, right? Especially if you've presented it in such a way that they're
right.
Pretty capable, pretty smart, pretty like they're on their feet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you have to make it questionable. You have to inject subtlety because if you don't, you do undermine your protagonist. But there's
the way I originally. Oh, go ahead.
The other thing after know your audience is trust your audience.
Mm-hmm.
So trust your audience that you can be clever and they can get it, while you can still believably say that Aggie doesn't.
So one thing that I was going to point out specifically with this storyline is in the last book that you had with her, you had a big reveal moment and you did it the classic way. Mm-hmm. And it was big and it was impactful, but at the same time, I feel like one of the things to pay attention to when you're doing these kinds of reveals where you're showing all of these baddies is that, and actually you had 2 or 3 big reveals in She Wakes in Water. Mm-hmm. Because you had the betrayal, you had the brother, you had...
I haven't read it. Shut up.
Well, you'll figure it out.
None of these words mean anything to you right now.
No,
and you had the end one.
Yeah.
I'll just say, right? So you had 3 major ones. And they all followed kind of this stereotypical classical reveal. So now you've created a scenario and an environment for your audience where they're on guard.
Yeah.
We're already on guard, and anyone near this character I'm very suspicious of. So unless you're going to make it the person that they've been with their whole damn life, it's probably like anyone else.
It's the rabbit. It's just the rabbit. It's the rabbit the whole time. Yeah.
No! Mirage!
But to your point, Gib, there's nothing wrong with you going back and it's like, because you've done it once already. It's like, can I go to that well again? It's all in the execution, Like,
it is.
Just don't Shyamalan your way through it, right? Like,
Yeah.
Well, for the sake of, you know.
Well, I think it's because I love the character and I love the people, like, because this is like my highest rated, least read of my books. So for all 9 fans out there, I want to do something solid for them, you know, and I'm trying to do it in such a way that it feels meaningful, you know, because I already know what else I have planned. And my wife's already pissed off at me for what I have planned. And
oh gosh.
I
know she was pissed off at you at the last book, and then I got to parts, and I was like, "You bastard!" And you were like, "Yeah, well, you got to that part."
Yeah. It's. I want to do it like, again, these are tragic heroes, and you can't have tragic heroes without tragedy, obviously, you know. And you want to make sure that, like, if they have a blind spot, it's because it's an earned blind spot. Because you know, like, you know, I'm not like. You would never suspect Shae of being your villain because of a place of love, you know. But so when it does happen, it's kind of like, why, how? And it's because I could, because it's like, and the greatest villain line is because I can. It's not because it's not for money, it's not for power, it's not for, you know, I want to rule the world, because I can. And it's like, and that nothing hurts worse than betrayal, you know. So and so again, I've written it. I can easily delete those last couple lines and just done it classically. I think when I get to the end of the book, I'll have to really sit back and look at it. Because when I polled my friends who've read the books and things like that, it's 50-50. It's 50-50. I have one friend that she knows who the villain is because she got so sick of waiting. She asked me like 8 months ago. She's like, I just need to know. And I said, if you really want to know, I can't put the genie back in the bottle. And I told her, and she's like, son of a... So, like, again, it's 50-50. And I can't... But this isn't about my catharsis. This is about like how do you know when to end a story? How do you know when to do these other things? Because some stories, I think we can all say, okay, I will rephrase that. I will say, and I think other people agree, and I think other people might agree with me. Stephen King can write a phenomenal story, but he's only landed like 7. You know,
Stephen King could write a phenomenal story.
I'm using the collectivism world of Stephen King that we know and love and grew up on, your respective but how many of those planes landed really well as opposed to they just kind of crash and burn? So well, it hit the ground. It's technically a landing. So,
and how many do we only love because of the adaptations of them?
Right.
Are we talking about different things then? It's like the how do you know versus like sticking the landing. Are we like sort of merging those two?
We're talking about everything to do with ending.
Yeah. The right way, the wrong way, if there is such a thing.
I am I'm such a basic bitch when it comes like endings, man. Like give me the fucking villains losing. Right? Give me the heroes winning and just deliver a very straight down the center plate. Like what feels to me like a full meal. Like that feels really good. There's a hamburger, there's a french fries, there's a shake. Like I'm into that. That's the speed, because it's what I'm comfortable with being able to write, and I know that it works. I have the handles of how to make that concept work. Trying to clever my way into an ending gets me into more trouble than that I think I'm capable of doing, if that makes any sense. So I guess it depends on where your experience level, your comfort level of being able to land it, because there's plenty of times like, you clevered your way into bullshittery, right? That doesn't make it like... You didn't do enough front-end work to make that ending work out for you, right? If that makes any sense.
No, I totally understand what you're talking about. And, like, I feel like where stories end up losing people is when they try to overcomplicate or get extra, clever in their execution. That's usually when you end up having shit. I'm sorry, everybody. Sai's been sending sexy women that are super yoked out in our private chat. It's very distracting to all of us at this point.
I think the technical term is muscle titty bitches, and it is
muscle titty bitches. Wow.
So listen,
you said it too.
So we need to just say, don't be J.J. Abrams, don't be Rian Johnson, because while they can put butts in seats, there are a lot of angry viewers.
Also,
with
in
both
that case, like I agree with Sai. They're guilty only because they don't understand the audience. They didn't understand the material. Mm-hmm. They interjected what they typically are. Like if you go see, Rian Johnson's movies, like it's so on brand for him to do what he did with the Star Wars franchise. But don't do that, right? Don't do that, because that's not what your audience is. And I believe that has to account for something, right? It's not to account for everything. You can do tiny bits of it, right? Like, I don't know, using Abrams as an example, when he took on the Star Wars franchise, like, I'm gonna see so many lens flares. I swear to God, I'm gonna see a ton of lens flares in this series. It makes a lot of sense, because that's what he did. But when it comes to like his storytelling, I was like, yeah, okay, I get it. He kind of understood what people were going for, to the point where he was almost regurgitating everything, right? And I think that's where people who take on franchises don't quite understand what they're getting themselves into. But when it comes to your stuff, go ham. Who cares, right? Like, it's what you're known for.
Yeah, well, and I think that, like, we've said this so many times, but if you don't know who your audience is or who you're trying to market to, then you're not going to know where to take your story or how to do reveals or how to do your endings, because you don't know who your audience is. Now, if you're writing for you and hoping you find an audience, then write the endings that you want and go from there and hope you find that audience. But if you have an audience, you need to understand what it is about your work that they like in order for you to keep them as an audience. Because just because you got them once doesn't mean that you're entitled to them forever. That's not how that works.
Right. And I just want to close this off, because it is a tangent. It doesn't have anything to do with the topic, but it does have to do with the discussion. People going to see episode 7, 8, or 9 are not there because they're fans of JJ, and they're not there because they're fans of Rian Johnson. They're there because they're fans of Star Wars. So the creator needs to know when to get the fuck out of their property's way, I guess, is my takeaway.
I agree with that. And also because, like, Star Wars delivers on itself independent of your,
of your what's in the fucking box bullshit. Yeah.
Who cares? Like, like, you just show up, right? You literally have to press like the Star Wars button on your computer and people will freaking love it. Just get out of its way, right?
That's also the money printing button, by the way.
I think we're looking at rose-colored glasses on some of these situations, because people will hold the original. If we're just going down this tangent, let's go down this fucking tangent, because again, it ties back into how to end something.
Yeah.
Star Wars, the original trilogy, some people say they're deified and they're untouchable, and I say that's not true. Everything can be touched. And then when the prequels came out, it's the exact same division.
I'm laughing at everything can be touched. I'm just imagining, your wife made Jell-O or something, or like a fucking pie, and there you are, just sticking your finger in it.
That is not where I went with it, but okay.
It's not my finger.
Oh my God.
So anyway,
continue.
So
not with that though. The other thing.
No, I understand. You have this deified trilogy sitting up on a shelf, and people are like a whole, like, golden calf sitting up there, whatever. Then the prequels come along, and people were like, half the audience was like, "Oh my God, new Star Wars is so great." The other half was like, "This sucks. This sucks major." And it's like the great. You actually have talented actors with the most wooden dialogue and a CGI background, and it's very fake. And who cares about trade federations and midichlorians? And people were just as upset then. And the problem is when the fan base is so rabid that you can't make them happy. So when JJ came along, like we can mock him all he wants, but the man actually has a brilliant idea when it comes to his mystery boxes. We say it as a joke, we say it as a pejorative, but what he gets you to do is turn pages. When he was the producer for Alias, every episode ended with like a little stinger that made you want to watch the next one immediately. And it was great for bridge. Oh, it's a fantastic show, except for it doesn't stick the landing, because it kind of runs out of steam. It's one of the things, again, he didn't know the ending, but he knows how to turn pages. So he passed it off to the next person. He had said, here are 8 different great plot lines that could possibly go down this path. And then Rian Johnson came along and just did. I'm not going to say, here's the thing. I did not enjoy the movie as a whole, but I will say he did try to inject something different into the franchise. However, it didn't need that time. Like, Star Wars as a space opera does not need to know about the dangers of war profiteering. It's something that's been not in the Star Wars universe, that's not necessary when you're just doing space laser swords and wizards fighting against the space Nazis. You don't need the war profiteering aspect. But he wanted to inject modern day politics into that aspect and try some different things. And he also made it part a comedy. And he completely he wrote a whole bunch of weird scenes, and then people laud him and they hate him. But the point is the franchise as a whole has been diminished over and over and over and over. Some people think the extended books are phenomenal. Some people think they're hot. They're just fan fiction garbage. You know, the only thing I've ever found to be quote unquote pure was like the Filoni animated stuff that like came from a place of love as opposed to replace, like it was meant to add, not to divide, you know, and that stuff is universally held as like mostly positive. So when the fan base is rabid, no matter what the property happens to be, it comes to a point where you don't know how to end because you don't know how to make anybody happy. When no one's happy, you just at a certain point you just say fuck it, put a bow on it, you're done. You know, it's take it for whatever it is, people, because clearly you people are you're kind of assholes. You know. Now it doesn't help when the creators like your Snoke theory sucks, and or you know Lucas going back and tinkering with the original classics and adding stuff that doesn't belong in there. You know, there's always going to be a symbiosis between the creator and the consumer. There will forever be. And if you are a positive creator who listens to your base and gives them while also like changing, like have a good working relationship. If you hold your consumer base, your fans in contempt, well then they're going to destroy you. You know, it's like George Martin and his Game of Thrones stuff. He's never going to finish that book. It's never going to happen. And he doesn't care. And but then has the gall to say, "Hey, I have other projects, and they're just as important to me in my life." It's like, well, we made you a millionaire off of this series, so you're sitting on our backs of our dollars. But even that is a contract without no one signed it. You know,
right?
We gave you money for this book, but the expectation was there'll be more. You'll end it. We want to know an ending. How badly do people want to know how Game of Thrones really ends? Sure. Even today, they're crazy for it.
Sure.
Yep.
And to your point, Gib, do you think there's just no way to pay that off, right? Because it's just got out of control. Yeah,
it's too big. You've the widening gyre is so huge now that there's no way to bring it back to a point. You know, now maybe there is. Maybe he is that talented. Maybe he can bring it to such a point that everybody weeps with joy and tears of happiness. That I doubt it. You know, but I'm a cynic, so like
how many?
I don't know.
Okay. Like, is it arguable that you should have? I've heard this before. It's like, hey, establish what your ending looks like way ahead of time so that you're working towards it. But I know people who don't do that. I know people who are just like, I'm going to build the track as the train is right behind me chugging along, right? I don't feel. I'm not that accomplished as a writer, so I don't work well in that ambiguous space. However, I do understand that there's opportunities to amend that ending so that it tightens the screw a bit without completely throwing it out the window, right? I know people who don't work with a catch net, and I'm like, holy crap, how do you do it? And like, it's just like they akin it to like the happy accident that happens whenever I'm drawing, and I'm like, yeah, but I still know what I'm drawing, like I still like the thing that happens with the brush or like the pencil stroke. Sure, that presents it. So that's what I'm talking about, where I'm like, I understand the end goal, but somehow there's something in there that splashes across the page. I'm like, oh, that's a nice effect, right? It was unintended, but the baseline of what my goal is still exists. What they're saying is like, I don't even know what this thing is going to turn into just yet. I just know that I kind of want it to be purple and green. I'm like, oh, you balls to you, sir, to have that level of confidence in the process,
I mean, that's how I do art.
No, but that's how I do art as well. And things like, I think it comes down to your tone and not watch your mouth. But I mean, if it's a comedy, rules are off.
Yeah.
Rules are off. You can have a comedy series.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Because if your stuff is, people come to the material with a lighthearted feeling. It's here to make you laugh, and your desire for continuity is less. It's a lower factor than it is for the chuckles. Like if some people come to like hards. Okay, the Naked Gun. Okay.
Okay.
Take the Naked Gun or Airplane or anything like those type of products. If it came back later and you found out that like Frank Drebin was his own grandfather, fantastic. Or even Futurama. That show was like, it was comedy first and heart character later, but then you find out that yes, Fry is his own grandfather due to a weird time travel thing. That makes no sense. But who gives a shit? It was a comedy that was like, it was loosely adjacent to like some sci-fi space stuff. And the tone was like, hey, these characters love each other and we're going to tell jokes. Continuity-wise was kind of all over the place, but that's not what people were there for.
Snoo, snoo.
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
I was going to say, even going into your Naked Gun thing, there were plenty of scenarios and situations where you're like, logically, this cannot possibly happen. Or like an airplane, when the woman's having a panic attack and there's a long line of people that are just waiting to beat the crap out of her. Like, first off, y'all didn't get through TSA with all that shit.
There was no TSA in the 80s.
There was no TSA there.
But you know what I mean? Like, you get through security and you have like a mace and like a fucking like a giant ass like
a noose, a pipe, I think, like, a gun.
One old lady was holding a gun. Yeah.
In part 2, the guy buys a bomb in the airport and takes it onto the flight.
Right.
In part 2, they go to space.
Exactly.
It's
a suspension of reality in favor of humor.
And
so
like take something like Breaking Bad. Okay, I know like how we always like
never
talk
saw
about
it.
We end up going to TV shows. But Eric, did you see Breaking Bad? Are you just fucking with me? Did you see it?
No, I've never seen it.
A portion of it until about season 4, and then I said, "Oh, I think I'm done."
Okay, it does end very, 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 very well. But when you look back on the episodes that you did watch, you will notice that every plot story is incredibly contrived. And we can just strike that up to plot, but it gets away on the phenomenal acting and the pacing and the way it's shot. Meaning, this guy gets cancer. He just happens to see, he goes on a ride along with his brother-in-law who happens to be a DEA agent. He just happens to see his former student who knows how to do meth. And then when he's stuck in
I think we can all know how to do math, Gib.
Hang on, but then there's this one scene where like season 2, I think it is, where he's stuck inside that van or that RV. And the DEA has surrounded his thing, and they're not going to get out of this. Oh my God, they're caught. What are they ever going to do? Except like of all the DEA, of course, his brother-in-law is in there, and he is part of the gang, so he knows to like fake a call to get like this. His sister-in-law is like the guy's wife is in danger. He's got to leave, and it gives him a chance to egress. And that would only have worked because the one DEA agent in all the city who happens to be his brother-in-law was there at that time. That if you put that in any other plot type of thing, it was like that is some contrived bullshit. But because the phenomenal acting of Walter White and Jesse Pinkman, you're like, oh yeah, your brain tunes out the continuity. You can get away with more bullshit under the guise of this is good drama. No, this is contrived, but it's so well executed. The tone. It always comes down to the tone. The more up your own ass with how important you think something is, and more people that you are inviting your audience to put their head up their own ass while they watch or consume your product. And when you make your rules and your scriptures so airtight, you screw up or the ending's not right. You set that tone. You made the dinner plate. If you fuck up dinner, that's on you. You set the spread. Be careful, like don't put a Big Mac on my fancy China plate. So
I'm gonna need to think about that.
McDonald's.
I know McDonald's. So got some Nugs. I'll go for some Nugs right now.
Oh my gosh, are we back to nuggets?
I need a double quarter pounder stat.
Oh my God, right. Mayo, ketchup, and onion. Oh.
So much onion. Oh my God.
Anyway.
I'm going to go make steak after this, and it's going to be amazing.
But like I said, it always, I think, take something like, is anybody else watching House of the Dragon?
The first episode I've watched, yeah.
Right. I watched it, and I was whelmed. Neither over, neither under. My lack of hair was not blown back. It was just, it was new actors doing the exact same things I've already seen in the previous Game of Thrones.
No one had to hold your purse?
No clutching of pearls.
No.
Oh my.
But it's like I've already seen King's Landing. I've already seen dragons. I've already seen a white-haired girl bemoaning she should be queen. I've already seen the small council. I've already seen people in brothels having sex exposition. You've shown me nothing new. You're showing me just same place, the same themes, same everything, just with a new cast of actors. And so that feels like that's boring to me. I'm not saying it's a bad show or it's bad writing. It's just boring writing. And
if you're not showing anything new, if you're not telling a new story with anything new, then what are you doing? All you're doing is regurgitating a story that you've already heard, told. That
people want it. That's the thing. There is a group of people that want that. They don't want.
I was going to say, like, you can't do more out of like that world than what they're giving you. I mean, short like doing the underwater, the society that's
Avatar
underwater.
2, yeah.
Like, you've got to. I think they have these guardrails that are in place so that it makes sense for it to be in that in that IP. It's sort of like, but to your point though, yeah, the whole I should be next in line, I should be the heir apparent. I think they could have done more with that, right? So the concept of Game of Thrones isn't the part to me that's like boring. It's the way, like, all the plot, all the story that they're putting up bores the heck out of me. I was like, oh, we're gonna do this again,
Well, that's the thing though, is that's literally telling the exact same story. I'm not saying that you can't have it in the exact same universe with all of the same, tropes and limitations. But if you were telling me Daenerys Part 2, or you're telling me Arya Part 2, like, okay, but why wouldn't I just go read the first time?
I get it.
If you're just going to tell the exact same story, why wouldn't I go to the original? What makes your story something that I should give a shit about? And that's what a lot of people, I think, forget. Like, a perfect example is, we've talked about this where storytelling ends up being like cyclical. One of the things that we noticed happening a lot in the indie comic scene is we had like a big period of time where everybody was telling werewolf stories, right?
Okay, sure.
That's now switched, and a lot of people are telling fucking Dracula. And by a lot of people telling Dracula, I mean we had like back-to-back shows of people that had Dracula comics.
Wow.
And it's they're telling the story of Dracula, but they all have drastically different hooks. Like so Narwhal, instead of doing Dracula, like he's doing vampires, but he did Nosferatu, and he's doing his telling of Nosferatu, which is very different from like the theatrical or the movie telling of Nosferatu. We had Clint Stoker, who's telling his version of Dracula, which is a total different take on Bram Stoker's Dracula. And those things are like, you can have it in a similar setting, similar characters, similar everything, but tell an entirely different story. But if you're not telling anything new, why would I buy Clint Stoker's Dracula when I can buy Bram's?
Ah, damn it. Okay. I would have told.
Yes, you got to tell a different story, Eric. You
way.
can't tell the same story you already read.
That's all I got. Here's the thing.
It's not, though.
And here's the argument towards. And I want you to consider it, okay? When somebody picks up a book that is akin to whatever it's going to be compared to, right? It's their first time being exposed to that story.
Yeah.
Right? There's an opportunity there in which, like, they've never even heard of Bram Stoker. They know Clint's, and it's almost maybe beat for beat, 1-to-1. I'm sure he's going to get flogged for it later. Like, you just fucking stole this from, like, later on after that discovery. But there is something to be said, I mean, about like, hey, that's their first exposure to that version of Nosferatu, even though it is as close to the original source as you can get. I know that's obviously me trying to like, it's my coping mechanism, you guys. That's me like broadcasting cope. I
mean, that's the thing, and that's why people reinvigorate old stories and why classics continually come back. But the likelihood that somebody is going to tell a shot for shot regurgitation of a story that was already told is pretty low, because anytime you read a story, you're thinking, oh, this is cool, but what would have been cooler is if this happened. Or I like this, but I feel like they made Frankenstein's monster just brainless, but really I think that he was a lot more gentle and just didn't understand his own strength. So I'm going to play into that more. And so the overall,
you're wandering into my territory.
Yeah. But that's the thing is I don't think that without you literally just plagiarizing the entirety of a story, which there's a reason that's a bad thing.
I will delete myself.
Like no, that's the thing though, Sai, is you literally don't plagiarize. You're taking a world that already exists and you're building upon it based on what you think should change.
I was playing it up for yucks, but yes. Okay.
Well, then continue.
No.
No, you interrupted me twice. Go ahead.
I'm the funny aside person, so that I'm explaining that my aside was merely for the ha.
Yucks.
Yes. Hi.
What I'm getting at
it's like something like Erica said earlier. He keeps referring to himself as basic, and he's not. He clearly is not. But and I think what we have is a scenario where you even in basic writing, you only have like your main person versus person, person versus nature, person versus self, person versus like supernatural, and then sub stories you have like rags and riches, the quest, the comedy, the voyage, the journey home, these kind of things. But it's until someone comes up with something new, you're always going to be regurgitating one of these basic story type elements, And to bring it back to our topic of the ending, does the ending need to be a bow? Does the ending need to be a punch in the mouth? Does the ending need to be a gasp? Or can it just be a gentle like right into the sunset?
Or a dot.
Or a dot.
To be continued.
Question mark,
The end?
Well, no, that's how I love that. That was the end of Flash Gordon. It was like the end, question mark.
Right.
To be contended.
Oh my gosh, sigh. Terrible.
You love it.
And it's so there's no right answer to that. There is what fits your story,
Sure.
Or but I think we all have preferences,
Yes.
like if I'm trying to think of something that's universally beloved.
I think that we can all agree, decide at the outset, is this going to be a fixed story?
There.
Or is this going to be an episodic that goes on forever? And this is what I was talking about with Shae when you guys joined the call, was if you look back, and I'm gonna do it. If you look back at the original series of Star Trek, right? Once you knew the characters, once you knew the universe, not much really happened to further the overall universe. It was just a series of limited like little shoeboxes that each episode existed in, and you could do that forever. You can really do that forever, which is why things like Star Trek in novel form have lasted forever. I used to collect next gen novels from pocketbooks, and they completely not really fitting into the chronology of the show, but they could go on forever. And if that's what you want to do, you need to decide to do that. You know what I mean? You can't
as a writer side, like
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, because if you decide that that's what you're going to do in the beginning, and then 5 issues in, you're like, I've got to wrap this up. It is such a fucking letdown to your audience, because then in number 6, you've got to establish some story that was happening the entire time, and then tie that up with a bow.
Yeah.
And in contrast, if you're going to decide that there's this arc, you need to commit to the arc, right? I've seen so many creators be like, okay, this is going to be a three story arc, right? 3 books. And then they get started on the 3 books, and either they don't have enough story, they have too much story, or they have too much success. And then 3 stories doesn't work for them because, hey, I'm making money. I want to keep making money. But rather than move on to the next thing, it's like, now I want to shoehorn everything in the middle of this arc that's already happening.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that there's any room for somebody who writes a story that they initially intend to be a one-off, like a one and done, and they end up hitting a level of fandom that they didn't expect, and the fans are calling for more? Do you think that there's any room for them to go back and continue on a story where they originally had an ending, or do you think that it's
Jurassic
you got to
Park,
figure it
Ghostbusters?
No, you just put it in the exact terms. Do I think there's any room for them to go back? You don't go back. And that's my point. You don't go back and like retcon 3 things in order to make a story 2 possible. What you do is you take the first story as Bible, and then you work around that. You find a way. Life finds a way. You find a way based on what you've done in the first thing to continue that story. Okay, well, if your protagonist dies at the end, I guess you're telling a story about the afterlife. Or maybe in your universe they get resurrected. but something. You can't undo. Of course you can change your mind, but you can't change your mind about what you've already done without pissing off your audience.
You're talking about, adhere to a certain level of continuity, Si. When it
Right.
Yeah.
I don't mind you changing your mind and deciding to give us 70 more stories out of a one shot. That's absolutely fine. Just move on from the first story you told. Don't go back and rehash it, and don't try to contradict everything you told us that made us love the character to begin with.
That's fair.
For me, when it comes to like an ending, and I'm using air quotes that you obviously can't see, but it has to be as part to do with not everything, okay, but like paying off the setup. And that for me is the hardest thing to really keep track of. Again, I'm not as sort of experienced in the space, but there are plenty of times my editor is catching me up to like, Eric, did you know you set this up, but you didn't pay it off? And I'm like, oh crap. Yeah, that's kind of important. There is, and it's not only the obvious thing where it's like, a punch and then the next shot is some guy getting punched in the face, right? It's not that. It's more of like the emotional payoff of something that you don't even know you were building towards.
You made us care about this, whether you meant to or not, and now you have to you have to close that door.
Address it. You know what I mean? Address it in some capacity. It may be clumsy, but certainly because you set that up and I made you care. Great points. I made you care about it. You have to be aware that that's what you did. And I am so clumsy and so new at it. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I did that. And thank goodness my editor is in place to be like, yeah, you kind of need that, dude.
Yeah.
And
the other thing
I've given the image, the what do you call it, the books to, they're like, where is this thing that we need? Because that is that's from an audience standpoint, that's the closure that we need in order to get to hit this, to have these scenes really land, or it just comes off that you didn't even care about that character.
Right. The other thing is, if say you don't have an easy answer for what's going to happen because of that, at least touch back to the fact that it happened, that it's still something to be addressed. Don't like maybe in a future, for you, a future book, but don't just like mention it and then forget about it for 3 books and expect me to give a shit about it 3 books later. I guess is my point. Just like a little, I can't think of an exact, a specific example of it, but anytime you had like television, a lot of television shows in the past, when there was some ongoing big bad, there was always that look back over the shoulder of like, that thing is still out there, you know?
Well, it's X-Files, right? X-Files through and through, right? They will always sort of like, somewhere in the background, there's going to be a hint of like, tar going through some guy's eyes, or like some, whatever. Yeah. Like there's always this,
or like the guy with the tattooed puzzle on him, where it was like he ate the villain of that episode, and it's like, you see that he's still kind of okay at the end. Or like the vampires. I think the vampire episode, they get away or something like that. But the point is, there's still like that little acknowledgement at the end, kind of the wrap up of the episode, where they're filling out the reports or getting yelled at by Skinner or what have you. Where it's like, we realize the fact that we've left something out there in the universe. And I just think that creators would do well, not to in a heavy-handed way, but to at least acknowledge that slightly.
I agree.
All right. Does anyone have any last-minute thoughts or points before we go to our wrap-up?
My last point or thought would be, if you know your story, sometimes the story happens and the characters react. Sometimes the story is the characters create the plot. Both are viable in their own way, meaning you could have a space station story where an asteroid hits the space station, they have to survive. Okay, that's cool, and I want to see that. Or you could have a situation where, due to an argument, one of the characters ignores their duties and doesn't turn on the whatever radar, and then it gets hit because of their mistake. And it's like the characters then are creating the plot, and like their actions create the next step, or the plot happens and the characters react. Both are viable in their own way. But if you know your story and take it to its logical conclusion, you will know your ending. And pick the thing that feels right. And I'm not saying it's the happy ending, it's not the sad ending, what feels right. And if you go with that, then you learn to trust your gut and your instincts. Then, you can't make everybody happy, but shoot for that. Be true to your story, and your ending will feel right.
Do justice to your story and your characters.
Right.
Well, and I think that the last thing that I can think of would be know what the story is that you're trying to tell, at least on some level. There's a lot of people who have a good idea fairy and want to start writing and don't actually know
anything.
Like they don't know what the story is that they want to tell. They don't know why they want to tell it. They don't have really any motivation, and it's really difficult for you to pull something from nothing. So make sure that you know why you want to tell a story, what kind of story you want to tell, and then go from there. But you gotta know the basics.
Yeah, there's nothing harder from an audience perspective or from an editor's perspective than an author or an artist who just doesn't know what they want out of the story other than money, and they had a good idea at the beginning. It's like J.R.R. Martin.
Or like that's every initial image creator book.
That's fair.
We just want money, and we got this, action adventure. Like but this is 5 issues now.
I drew this badass looking character. Now let me create a world around it.
Yeah.
That's a lot what it felt like. When I like young blood back in the day. Like, wow. Okay.
The premise is so good. The premise is so. As a matter of fact, somebody made that comparison between Youngblood and Arcathena, because that's what Youngblood was like this whole sort of like public facing, what do you call it, team, social media team, pre-social media, right? They were the Hollywood darling type people. And I was like, I never made that connection. I suspect because I sent that book to Rob, he's reading it going, you fucker, this is what I, like, I already did this. Where's your archer? Where's your guy that's made out of rocks? Where's your, where's your athletic assassin lady? And I'm like, I'm sorry, Rob.
I'm sorry, Rob.
I think I liked Wildcats better because the X-Men allegory was way closer, and then you just had some guy named Grifter who just looked really cool and had guns.
Yeah. On that. Cool Factor, they had that thing. Did you know that apparently, as the story goes, Mark Silvestri just took every single X-Men character and like drew over the top of it, and that's how he came up with Cyberforce.
Yeah, because it's obvious like this guy's Wolverine because I can tell by the hair that does this.
Yeah. I love it. I'm like, the ball's on these guys. Go get them.
Yeah.
Anyway. Oh, it's funny. All right, Gib.
All right. Let's do some would you rathers. All right. You know what? I'll go first. Someone pick a number for me between 1 and 77. Just pick a number.
Eric, pick.
I did it last time. Let's say 62.
62. All right. Okay, would I rather have my significant other have an annoying best friend or an intimidating ex? Well, no matter which way I go, do I just tolerate the person? You know what? I'm a bitch. I'm gonna just go with the annoying best friend because I can always just walk away. I don't want to be scared by somebody. I'm too old for that shit. So I'd rather have the annoying best friend.
Danny Glover.
I don't feel like you're scared.
Well, that's the thing. He's like, oh, my ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, 6'5", and former UFC champion, tattooed, and in and out of prison. But they've got a hard. They're coming over for wine. Like, no, they're not. No, they're not.
And they're always in your
life. See, I don't want to associate with my exes, so I would have picked the ex because you never have to deal with them after a certain point.
No, there's an annoying best friend or the intimidating ex because especially I'm assuming by this it's like the imitating ex is still quasi in their life, some dude. Who,
oh, that's gross.
Who's got like a prehensile dick or something, can. So.
Yeah, I don't associate with exes usually ever. So.
You have a hard cutoff. Is that what you're saying? You're like,
I do. Yeah. Okay. Look, if it didn't work, then it didn't work, and there's no going back.
Yeah. If it didn't work, you're burning the shit to the ground, and there's nothing to go back to. Well, what are you gonna do? Reminisce over the charcoal?
Yeah, let's reminisce over all of the things that made us not work. I don't see that being a good grounds for a friendship. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm not friends with any of my exes.
Let's put you up next.
42.
42. I swear. I think we've done that one. No, we have not.
I thought you were removing the used ones.
Oh, I strike through them.
It doesn't. It doesn't consolidate the list down.
Yeah. No, I just do a bold and strike through. All right. Would you rather sing everything you say or dance instead of walking? Like instead of you have to dance. Move about the world.
I would love
sing everything.
I would love to dance instead of walking.
Okay.
That would be entertaining.
That's so fucking amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't have.
Are you a good dancer?
Imagining that in real life.
Or is it just
it doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Okay.
Does it matter? Like if I saw that person walking down the street, I would be so jealous. I'm like, you piece of shit. What thing do you have?
How I don't like your self-esteem. How can you feel this good about yourself? You're in public,
Okay.
loathing like me.
Let me put a stipulation on there. First of all, with this comes the skill of dance in picking this out. Yes.
No,
and
it's your current skills.
No.
Yes.
No.
Skill. It's your current skill set.
Shae, we have some trainings to do.
Yes, we do. I keep
secondly,
do Zumba.
Secondly, not the Tobey Maguire dancing.
No, it's totally
No. I refuse to be that douche.
Let me ask the evil genie. Yeah, confirmed. It's the skill set you have now.
No.
So.
Shae vetoes. Then it looks like I'm learning to sing.
Oh boy.
All right. Okay, so that's 2. Shae?
Shae.
We're going clockwise.
Let's do
The time warp.
9.
9. All right, scrolling up.
9.
We did 9.
Let's do 24.
24. All right. Okay, would you rather watch your most embarrassing childhood moment on a 1-hour loop every month, or remember it once a day for the rest of your life?
1-hour loop every month.
Okay.
I would just find humor in it. Look, at this point, Shae is a pretty open book. But if I had to do it every day, it would just get annoying. If it was once a month, I could find humor in that for a pretty good long time, I'm sure.
We could get popcorn. We could put a filter on and watch it through our phones.
This is the point where I fall down the stairs again. Remember that part?
That's it? That's the most embarrassing time?
No, I don't even.
Let me tell you about the time I nearly crapped myself in front of a cop diving inside of a park outside of Monterey. So
I ran around a tree a bunch of times and peed my pants.
I don't even know what my most embarrassing moment would be. I really don't. But I think it's because I've hit a point where I'm like, so like it's not embarrassing anymore.
Yeah,
I'm sad for you, Eric.
Let me tell you the time
I just did this yesterday.
Going down on me. Okay.
That would be embarrassing.
It was. Okay. Eric.
I mean, did he throw up?
She did not.
Thank you for catching that, kid. Such a bitch,
I apologize. She said, okay. And just kept going. Like, all right, God bless you.
I did take my pills an hour ago, so.
All right, Eric, what's your number?
10. 10.
10, okay.
10.
Okay. All right.
Like the picture I sent you, a 10.
That's so good.
Would you rather wear jeans 1 size too small or shoes 2 sizes too big?
What a cookie. That's hardly compromising. I'll
tight jeans
one
or
size tight, 1 size too small. I would want my stupid gut to be pouring over those jeans.
Oh my God, muffin top! That's what I'm going to call you from now on.
Oh no, it just really highlights the dick. So okay.
Yeah. Assuming we were making a lot of.
Yeah, it really highlights the camel toe.
No, because last week your question was like you wanted to send your mother a dick pic. So.
Yeah, but it still it had no indication on size. It would still be like, oh, you're as big as you are when you were 5.
If I do recall, I think that there were a lot of small jokes.
Yes, there were. After that.
Yes. Yeah, because your mother used an accent and size. I was like, what accent is that? That's Filipino. So.
Yeah. I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah, I couldn't do the jeans too small because they're so restrictive already. That would be
Yeah.
really annoying. I would rather just wear shoes
Okay.
because it's too big.
Quick question: have either of you two worn women's jeans?
Have I?
Yeah, either of you,
Yes.
either you or
Yes.
Gib. Yeah.
Yep.
So
I have. When I was much this is a horrible thing to say about
Why do
myself.
you guys have
man.
pockets?
And I'm going to say this.
Why?
like, just,
Because it ruins the line. You see, you have to be able to see all the lines without any bulges. So that means we don't get pockets for anything.
No, I
Yeah,
said,
or
do
the-
you have pockets? There are pockets in there that don't hold too much like stuff.
okay, so your objection is not the existence of pockets; it's the existence of those pockets. And let me just say, I've thought about buying cheap jeans and sewing in real men's pockets into all the chick pants.
You can't store anything in those pockets that
I know.
in the pants that I've worn. Yeah. Doesn't make any sense.
I like to say that I've never left 2005 because I still wear cargo shorts because I love them, which I do. But it's also
I'm wearing them right now.
I have basically become the Baka book for my
You
wife.
are the
so
purse.
I am the walking purse, and I'm okay with it. It behooves because like you get my cargo shorts on my cold dead body. Yeah, come at me, bro. Like these are mine forever. I will die in these.
I mean, I even tried for a while doing like the bra storage thing. Do you know how annoying that shit is? When you're like,
There's bra storage?
Because
just
we'll
tuck
have
it in
cuts, and so you just tuck it in on the sides to try and like hold some of your stuff.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't
Now
make
your
any
phone's got
sense.
titty sweat.
Yeah, and it gets real sweat. Like it's like a lot.
Eric, you like chicks that work out. You can't.
But I don't like their titty sweat. Like I just like looking at them.
Yeah. You
Oh my God, Eric.
That's why they glisten.
Just bottle that. Call that your next. You know what? Argathena, titty sweat. That's the spinoff.
That's a thing.
You know what?
Wow.
You're now removed from the liking buff chicks community.
Oh my gosh, stop it. All right. Thank you, everyone who hung out with us.
Season 3, episode 18, Embrace the Titty Sweat. We want to thank everybody for... No. Okay, you think.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
That's it.
Love the titty
Y'all being here. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to Red Valkyrie. Check out our merch store. And also, if you're interested in having any of your stuff reviewed, go to redvalkyrie.writingprose@gmail.com. Send us your writings, musings, whatever, poems.
Send us your creative endeavors.
Yes. And we will talk about them live once a quarter. And otherwise, see you guys next time.
Love you.
Bye. Don't send titty sweat.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Writing Prose. Please like, share, and subscribe if you've enjoyed our content. You can also become a channel member or shop our merch store to support us. We're currently accepting fan-submitted stories for anonymous on-air review later in the season. Send your submissions to redvalkyrie.writingprose@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.